Let's have a quick conversation in Spanish. I could ask you, ¿Quieres un café? You could answer, sí quiero. Did you notice how I don't have to say, ¿Tú quieres un café? And you don't have to say, sí, yo quiero. And it's all thanks to verb conjugations in Spanish. We're going to be talking about the history of pronouns, verbs, why conjugations work the way they do. So let's get started. Before we even get started into what verb conjugations are, which is just another way of saying who is doing what and when, we need to understand that there's a pronoun and then there's a verb. To better understand pronouns in Spanish, we need to go 5,000 years back to the Pi language, or the Proto-Indo-European language. Think of the Pi language as the ancient parent of over 400 languages that are spoken today, including Spanish and English. And thanks to this, they both separate pronouns in a very similar way. So we have the first block, including first, second, and third person singular. So that would mean I, yo, you, tú, he, she, it, él, ella, usted. And the second block has plural first, second, and third person, which would be we, nosotros, y'all, ustedes, they, ellos, ellas. There are two main differences between the pronouns in English and in Spanish. The first difference is the genders. In Spanish, every single object either is a masculine, el, or a feminine, la. Those are the articles that allow you to identify the gender of an object. So let's say we want to make a sentence with el café, the coffee. We would have to conjugate it as if it was a he. And if we wanted to talk about an object like la maleta, we have the article la, so we would have to conjugate the bag as she. Now we have the second difference, usted. Formal speech wasn't a big thing in Latin or in the Pi language, but somehow in the 1500s, Spain introduces vuestra merced as a way to show respect to nobility. And over the centuries, it got broken down until it became the usted that we know today. Here's the weirdest part about usted. We're referring to somebody, we actually speak to them as if we were talking about them. So instead of me going, ¿Cómo estás? How are you? I would go, ¿Cómo está? How is he or how is she? We have talked about pronouns. Now let's talk about verbs. We need to go back to the collapse of the Roman Empire. When Vulgar Latin spread across different areas in Europe, there's no clear timeline when Vulgar Latin became Spanish, but we do know that endings in Latin were broken down and separated into three main blocks: AR, ER, and IR ending verbs. So what is a verb ending? It all comes down to the way that we see verbs in Spanish today. Verbs are created by two parts, the stem and the ending. The stem holds the main idea of the verb. It's the one that we could actually trace to Latin, but the ending of the verb is the one that's going to give us information about who's doing what and when. So if we go back to the conversation that we were having earlier, ¿Quieres un café? You could answer, sí quiero. Quer is the stem of the verb querer, to want. The O and S endings are giving us information about who wants coffee and when. Now we can finally talk about the verb conjugations chart. This chart is going to be similar for every tense that you use. We'll have the pronouns on one side of the chart, and the AR, ER, and IR categories are always going to be positioned the same way. Now the only difference is the tense that we're using for the endings, whether that's future, past, present. But in the meantime, let's only talk about the present tense. So AR ending verbs in the present tense for the pronouns that we have are going to be laid out in this way. For yo, we're going to use the ending o. For tú, as. Él, ella, usted, a. Nosotros, nosotras, amos. Ustedes, an. Ellos, ellas, an. For ER ending verbs, we're going to use for yo, o. Tú, es. Él, ella, usted, e. Nosotros, hemos. Ustedes, en. Ellos, ellas, en. And for IR ending verbs, we're going to use for yo, o. Tú, es. Él, ella, usted, e. Nosotros, imos. Ustedes, en. Ellos, ellas, en. I truly hope I'm not losing you right now, because this is where everything will start to make sense, I promise. Let's conjugate the verb comer. To conjugate it, we need to break the verb down into two sections, the stem and the ending. The stem stays exactly the same, and we're just going to be changing the endings. Because comer is part of the ER ending categories, we're going to bring those endings over and we're going to replace them depending on the pronoun that we want to use. So to say I eat, we would say yo como. You eat, tú comes. He, she eats. Él, ella, usted come. We eat, nosotros, nosotras comemos. Y'all eat, ustedes comen. They eat, ellos, ellas comen. Let's try out an IR ending verb, vivir, to live. So we're gonna break the verb into two, the stem, VIV, and we're gonna replace the endings. So to say I live, we would say yo vivo. You live, tú vives. He, she, you formal live, él, ella, usted vive. We live, nosotros, nosotras vivimos. Y'all live, ustedes viven. They live, ellos, ellas viven. I hope this is all starting to make a little bit more sense, but I do remember promising leaving some tips and tricks. So let's get on to tip number 1. Every yo form will have the same o ending. Hablo, como, vivo, trabajo, quiero. Tip number 2. Every nosotros form will end with mos. You do have to remember the vowel that comes before the mos, but it's not going to be hard for you to recognize mos in a conversation. And tip number 3, and this is my favorite because you technically only have to memorize 2 vowels, a or e. Once you've identified what vowel belongs to the verb category that you have, you could add an s and it becomes a conjugation for tú, or you could add an n and it becomes a conjugation for ellos, ellas, or ustedes. So let's try it out with comer. Comer is an ER ending verb, so el, ella, usted would be come. If I add an s, tú comes, you eat. If I replace that s with an n, it becomes y'all or they eat. Ustedes, ellos, ellas comen. And let's try the verb vivir. The ending for el, ella, usted is e. So if we add an s, it becomes tú vives, you live. If we replace that s with an n, it becomes y'all and they live. Ustedes, ellos, ellas viven. Once you've figured out the conjugation, you could start making your own sentences. So for example, yo como la manzana. Tú vives en la casa. Él habla español. Nosotros compramos el pan. Ustedes leen el libro. Ellos cortan la naranja. And you could even make questions. ¿Qué compras? ¿Dónde vives? ¿En qué trabajas? ¿Dónde están? ¿Quieres un café? I really hope that you enjoyed this video and there were a lot of things that you were able to use to make your journey of learning Spanish a lot smoother. If you did end up liking any of the charts that we use or the vocab list, let me know and I could put it all together in a PDF form so you could download for free and practice on your own time. And I'm also a Spanish and design tutor, so if you do think that a one-on-one approach might be more helpful for you to grasp the concept of grammar, I'm going to leave the link down below so you could book a lesson with me. And in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Espero que tengan un gran día donde sea que estén y nos veremos la próxima vez. Chao!